I am 21. Found out my girlfriend, F20, lied about what she did when we split up for a week at the beginning of our relationship. How should I handle this? So I am 21, met my girlfriend F20 around 3 months ago. All's been good despite a couple bumps in the road here and there. We've spent an abundance of time together and have gotten pretty serious pretty quick, which is what we were both looking for and we're happy to have found. We established what we were looking for in a relationship early, and it really seemed like we were on the same page. To preface, as a young adult and teenager, I've only had relatively serious relationships in the past, one being 3 years long and the other over a year. Not super into sleeping around or little fling type things necessarily. This only to help understand my thought processes in this situation. We're both in college and summertime came around and she was planning to have to move back home a few hours away. The idea of doing long distance didn't excite either of us as we were only 2 months in, and as her family situation is far from optimal, she wasn't eager to go back home at all. As a result of these circumstances and the fact that this was a person and relationship I wanted to continue to pursue, I offered to let her stay at my place for around 3 weeks until her new living situation was arranged in our college town. She moved out and started crashing at my place. Being together that much, we got even closer, and things got pretty serious for being together only 3 months, especially compared to my past relationships. It was good though. We enjoyed being around each other. We enjoyed dating, still, and we were growing together. She ended up getting a job in our college town, which presented some issues as she doesn't have a car and I was driving her to work about half the time. Overall, though, it wasn't too bad, and in the least sorta, I'm such a good person type of way possible. I find extreme fulfillment providing for my partner and taking on responsibilities for them, even if it seems from the outside that it might be too much as a 21 years old, i.e. giving her a place to stay, driving her everywhere, and paying for quite a bit. So, all was good. As previously mentioned, however, we had hit a bump in the road just 3 weeks in. Around a month before we met, she had gotten out of a relationship that was only about a month long. She told me this and detailed what had happened. She said she didn't talk to her ex anymore and that she was over him. When we found ourselves at that 3 weeks mark, I was out of town and she told me that she needed to stop what we were doing, as she was too scared of getting hurt again after she had just gotten blindsided and dumped. I was pretty distraught by her telling me to basically screw off, but as much as I didn't want to, I understood her reasoning and the way she was feeling. Around a week later, we were still texting here and there, and she was dropping hints of wanting to see me again. Eventually, I invited her to come watch my band play at a frat party the following Saturday. She did. We saw each other, and she was immediately all over me and saying how sad she has been, yada yada, and we picked it back up and went from there. The following months up until now had been great. Like amazing, really. Here we go. This past week before I left for a trip to California, she was at work one evening and I was hanging at home. I was watching something on her iPad. Think what you want about this practice, but we have an understanding that we are able to go through each other's phones. So I go to her texts and scroll down and see her ex's name. It was from a couple months prior, and I read some stuff that I definitely didn't want to see and ended up figuring out the timeline. Essentially, in that week's span, after a month of being together at basically every moment besides work and class, she didn't just need time. Turns out her ex from her prior month-long relationship had called her and asked for her back. She dropped me, stayed with him for 4 to 5 days, and then came back to me. That's what I found out from the texts. She had never told me about this, even though I was completely honest about anything that happened, which was essentially nothing. When I confronted it about her, she denied it for about 10 minutes and dragged it out. I essentially said, if you don't tell me now, it's over. She eventually did and gave me the details I asked for and apologized and started freaking out crying, essentially saying she went back because she was scared I would hurt her and felt more secure with her ex. She said as soon as she saw him again, she knew she made a mistake. When trying to justify the not telling me part, she told me she was too scared of losing me to fess up. Not a great excuse, really. Not sure if it's necessary, but as far as what they did usually, but it wasn't much at all. Nothing past first base, really. Won't go into detail, but it was very important to know for a fact she was telling me the truth on that front, and she did manage to come up with a sort of proof, and I do believe her. At this point, I've talked to a handful of people about this and still don't know how I feel. At this point, I feel the urge to forgive her and try and work through this because I do love her. Most of the people I have told say I shouldn't, and I deserve more than to have to deal with this. I also think that's true. Overall, where I'm at in this current moment is I want to give her another chance. I want to try it again and see the amount of dedication and work she says she's willing to put in to earn my trust back. I want to trust her. I want this to work. And now to the next story, story 3. Been cheated on at the beginning of a 12-year relationship. Now I'm falling apart. Long message here. Please can someone find the time to advise or talk to me? So I've been with my fiancé for 12 years now, and we've done a lot together. Had 2 kids in the last 6 years. Then we also bought a home together. Been on holidays and spent time together a lot. Honestly, I met her when I was 20 years old and she quickly captured my heart so fast. This was my first relationship /kiss/sex etc. I wanted to be with her because we were friends for 4 months and it just grew and grew between us and she felt the same way. I'm extremely loyal, which I'm proud of. So if I'm with someone, I'm just committed to them and have maintained that all these years. I buy her gifts spontaneously, support her a lot. I work and earn. So she doesn't need to whilst she's caring for our kids. Our life together has been great. But 6 weeks ago, she hit me with a huge blow to our relationship. She told me that when we first together, her and her ex were still technically together. I had no idea about this, but she said around 2 months into our relationship, she had doubts that me and her would work. So she begun leaning on him more. Again, I had no idea. She eventually said she was going through a push and pull over us both, which resulted in an incident behind my back where both were kissing and one thing almost led to another, but she pulled away and came to her senses. Now when she came to me that weekend, I remember something was off, but she never fully explained what had happened. She's told me this ex did stick around from time to time, which I did have an incline about, but she assured me he was now her friend. Naive of me, I know, but I was 20 and completely in love. I think I have been in a state of denial about the past, because honestly looking back, knowing he was around made me extremely insecure and anxious a lot. I always felt something was off. Eventually, though, she did get rid of him, and both of us spent a lot of time building together. Within our first year, however, she's told me now that she engaged in sexting with a guy she used to be friends with in school. I remembered seeing him on a night out we both had and thought it was strange he was hanging around. She said nothing actually happened, nor did they kiss. But she engaged in sexting conversation as I slept beside her, which was just heartbreaking to hear. I also was never told over the years. So fast forward to 2015. We'd both moved into our own home and both of us had started working. This is when the worst happened. We threw a Halloween party and invited all our work friends. She told me she begun having feelings for a guy she worked with. By Christmas, they had kissed and engaged in an affair behind my back for 3 months. What's more, she said she was also painting me out to be this really horrible person at her workplace. She even said I was hitting her, which is unbelievably offensive as I'm literally incapable of engaging in an argument, let alone full-on hitting anyone. Especially a woman, especially someone I loved. She swears nothing usual happened between her and this guy, but she did believe at the time she loved him. She has shared everything she said about me behind my back, which has devastated me, and even said she took advantage of how naive I was. When he came to making her choose between us, she said she couldn't leave me, realizing she loved me and ended things. She did tell me things happened back then, but not to the extent of the affair. She quit her job instantly and blocked every single person from her workplace. I thought was strange at the time, but she didn't fully explain anything to me. So fast forward 8.5 years later. Nothing has happened since. She has said she was young, stupid, and has been tearing herself inside out with guilt over everything. She said she believed she was suffering from depression at the beginning, saying it's no excuse of course, but she has stated she'd do anything to put things right. She's had therapy for depression. A lot stemmed from her abusive dad when she was a child. Anything to make amends and correct the past. She said she sat on all of this because she was terrified of losing me, because she did realize in 2016 how much she loved me and didn't want to lose me. So what about me? I've been devastated by all of this. I'll be honest. My heart feels like it's been stomped and smacked around some. It's been 6 weeks, and I'll be honest. She has been extremely helpful in being there for me through it. But honestly, I've been reflecting on mistakes I may have made. Was I too clingy? Did I behave immature or something? I can't even see the years 2015/2016 anymore without feeling sick. It's like an illness. It's now spreading to more memories. I look at photos of us and think and wonder how she could do all this behind my back. But I know she is genuinely sorry for everything. So much so she's removed every single item of clothing she wore at those times. Removed music that she listened to. We recently got rid of our bed, and she said over and over she hates herself knowing what she did. She said she spent 8.5 years trying to make it up to me in her own way. But my mental health has been rocked by this. I feel like I'm in this strange grieving process and everything feels numb. I am still with her because I'm obviously an idiot, right? But I just want to know if all these questions and feelings I'm having are normal. Is this normal? Can anyone offer genuine advice? I know a lot will say leave, but this has been 12 years of my life, and it's not something I just wanted to decide quick. She knows I'm still deciding and could change. But can someone help me? I feel so alone at the moment and unloved. It's crazy. Next story, Story 3. Entitled Nephew's Mad at Me. In 2016, I bought a house, and less than a month later, my brother was evicted so the rental could be sold. He had just had a serious health issue and was not cleared back to work, so I allowed him to move in with me. During this time, his kid's mom had issues with the oldest, 14M, and told the cops she'd rather have child abandonment charges than have him in her home. So I stepped up and let him move in. The issue was that he didn't like his mom's habit, and he was very vocal about it. During this time, Dad got a job that required lots of travel, so my nephew stayed with me, and both parents notarized a paper giving me authority over him and to act as a parent for school, etc. Less than a year later, the younger son was kicked out as well, and he moved in. My house was only a 3-bed, so I ended up with the living room as my bedroom. Both boys stayed with me off and on until after COVID. Dad got a GF and moved into her place, but it wasn't big enough for the kids, too. By that point, the oldest was over 18 and the younger was just a few months away. During the time my brother and his boys stayed with me, they brought all kinds of stuff to my house. Multiple trucks they got cheap to fix and resell, used tires and other auto parts, tools, etc. At one point, they had over a half-dozen vehicles sitting in my yard. My neighbors started to show their displeasure with the situation, and I'd end up cleaning up their mess. This went on for a couple of years. They drag stuff here, and I end up cleaning up the mess they made of my property. I kept asking them nicely to get their stuff off the property, but I never pushed. But this year was the final straw. In March, I got notice from the county to clean it up, or I was going to get fined. I was able to get it clean enough that I didn't get fined. But once again, I did 90% of the cleanup, and very little was mine. So I decided enough was enough. I told both nephews they have until 6 p.m. on May 31st, 2024, to get their stuff off my property or it is forfeit. They've come a couple of times and gotten stuff, but every time they complain about the deadline and try to make me feel sorry for them, claiming they don't have a way to haul stuff or a place to put it. I tell them every time that I don't care. They have had years to get their stuff, and I'm not giving them an extension. Now the younger is posting on FB gripping G about a certain someone who is selling his stuff and throwing it away and won't give him time to get it. I'm blocked from seeing these posts, but my sister has seen them, and everyone who knows the boys knows they have stuff stored at me place. On top of everything else, I always told the boys they were not allowed to bring anyone to my house without approval. They did anyways and brought people they knew were thieves or dopeheads or both. I've had a bunch of stuff stolen. 4x8 utility trailer, generator, post auger I never even got out of the box before it was gone. tons of tools. Someone even stole the starter from under my truck and broke into my truck and stole some new parts one had to install. Then, on Saturday before Mother's Day, I woke up to find my motorcycle gone. I have another week for the police to investigate before insurance will make a decision, and I have had to bum rides this entire time. My sister can't believe the way our nephews are acting and talking about me, given everything I've done for them. I'm just so fed up that I'm on the verge of going LC for a while. These nephews of mine are the most entitled jerks I've ever dealt with. And no to the last story, story 4. Entitled relatives ruined my relationship with food. So, I, 27, just remembered this, since I was talking with one of my online best friends earlier. I've had problems with food since I was 11. I would go all day without eating and then indulge on food when I get home from school. And it honestly affected me, physically and emotionally. I was forced by my abusive dad to stop doing track, because he said that it was a waste of time. Honestly, every club I joined was a waste of time to him. Anyway, since I stopped running, it affected my weight. I literally stopped jogging every morning or doing anything active, and my relatives would comment on my weight a lot. Imagine telling an 11-year-old that they're too fat. Yeah. No. Well, because of that, I stopped bringing food to school. At age 10, I was already expected to take care of myself. That includes making my own school lunch. It actually got to the point where my homeroom teacher would give me money so I can buy food in the cafeteria. Well, fast forward to now. I still have a bad relationship with food. When I was working a corporate job, I would hoard food on my desk and locker. And honestly, still am, obese. But recently, I was so proud of myself. Since 2022 until now, I've lost 20 to 30 pounds. And I was improving my relationship with food. I wasn't hoarding food anymore. I was walking 1 to 2 kilometers a day. I had a system. It was working. I was telling it to my internet friends too. They were so happy for me. They are aware of my situation too. Then, of course, my relatives saw the improvement. One time, I was in the living room, which is rare since I usually lock myself in my room, eating lunch. And they made a comment how I was pigging out. And it hurt. A lot. I ignored it. But yeah. Then came the food accusations. They would make food that's too much for us. My kind uncle would give me some of the food in secret, but the rest of the family would know. And they would bitch at me how I'm eating their food when they use some of the food I buy. So, me, getting pissed, would stop eating and would just go back in my room. And then I'd go back to buying canned food and bread. And with me not eating their food, the food would spoil because they expect me to put their leftovers in the fridge. But the thing is, I barely go to the kitchen at that point. And they would also complain how no one's eating the food and just letting it spoil. And then another incident where, because they got pissed at me over something, I can tell what happened next time. I stopped going out of my room for a week. I got sick at that time. And I have this awful habit of locking myself in my room when I know they're furious. They shout when they're angry, and I'm completely terrified of getting shouted at. And yeah, I had not eaten anything for nearly a week. I probably lived off on 2 pieces of bread and water. My friends found out about it because I mentioned I needed to buy bread or something. Just plain bread. Because my leftover bread was stale. At that time, my best friend sent me money to eat. I honestly didn't wanna, but she knows my online bank since we've sent each other money multiple times in the past. It was the first time in 6 days I actually had a proper meal. To say that I cried when I bought an actual meal was an understatement. And today, I'm back to bread. But now, I've paired it with fried rice. Even though I'm getting sick and tired of rice and bread, it does make me feel full. But I've gone back to my food hoarding days. I'm here in my room hiding my food because I know that if I leave it in the kitchen, they will eat it. I mean, I don't mind sharing. I always make sure I have something for them whenever I have the money, buying them treats and all. But my meals for the day are for me alone. Well, that's all. I hope I can fix my relationship with food again once I move out. A little update. My kind uncle learned about my food situation. He had scolded my relatives, and he refused to eat without eating with me. He also leaves some food for me, and my relatives really can't say no to my kind uncle. He's the eldest, and he is in the spectrum. so they can't go against him. So, right now, I am eating normally. I'd miss a meal or two from time to time, but my food situation has gotten better, and I am expecting myself to move out in 5 months. I have a job now, starting in a couple of days. So yay, just need to save up and find a place for myself.